Welcome to True Cross Training, session number 4. I'm pumped about this one, guys. We're going to be talking about goals. Now, if you are watching on YouTube or the video of this, if you're listening, then you can't really tell, but I do want to make this clear. I don't wear the same shirt over and over again. Well, not all the time anyway. But I have done today what's called batching, okay? I've been recording a batch of podcasts. So yes, I have had on the same shirt, but it is the same day. So no, I'm not wearing dirty clothes, not this time at least. I just wanted to knock out several sessions today. Sometimes you're in the zone. Sometimes you're focused, the stars have aligned, and the schedule is clear, and I had the time today, so I wanted to sit down and just release a lot of stuff that I've been carrying around. And there is a time and a place to release certain things. And it's important to know the timing. It's very important. I've learned that because I have been in the past very quick to release things before it's time. But I also know that you can't just carry it around the rest of your life either. There comes a time when it is time to release it. And so today was just one of those days. It was a great day where I could sit down and just pour out. And so that's what I've been doing. This is the 4th session today and probably the last for today. But certainly not the last because there's so much more to come and got some guests lined up. This is a part of this podcast that I can't wait to get into. We've been covering a lot of just fundamental things over session 1, session 2, session 3, and now session 4, talking about what is true cross training, what is success, what is training. And today is the same day. Right now in this session, we're going to be talking about what are the goals and what is motivation. Very key things in understanding how to train, how to prepare, and how to live the life that God has designed for us to live. So there's a lot more to come, and I can't wait to have guests come in and be a part of this conversation with us and part of this training process. But today, we're on the 4th session. Well, at least today, for me, I'm on the 4th session. At whatever point you're listening to this is a very key session in understanding goals, how to define them, and how to achieve them. These are important. I talked about a little bit of this with success and how to define success. Now, I was speaking in broad terms, right? Broad terms, what is success? And then we do narrow that over time. I compared it to the training, to the shooting range, right? So at first, you're success because you're just there. It's successful just firing the gun. You finally own a gun. Now you're firing the gun. That's a measure of success. And then you hit the target. Just in the general vicinity, that's success. But the longer you do it, the less you're content with just pulling the trigger, the less you're content with just hitting around the target, and the more you desire the bullseye. And so we're going to hone in on that today and talk about goals. Goals become very specific. And when we're talking about the kingdom, and we're talking about you being designed for something, then we get very specific, okay? When we talk about the call, there is a general call. It's the call to God. We call this the call of salvation, that you were designed to be in relationship and in fellowship with God Himself. This is the general call of salvation to Himself. God calls you. And this is a call for everyone. Not everyone receives the call. Now, I know there are big theological debates that I just refuse to get into. I don't get into the theological debates very often. I heed the warning to Timothy to not get involved in debates. Now, I believe in good theology. I do believe in good theology, but I believe there is theology we can get sucked into that has been debated for centuries, and there is no conclusive, defined answer. You have giants who are giants in theology and philosophy, and they've come to different conclusions. So that tells me a lot about this whole debate. And I don't mind talking about it, but if it starts to divide and it starts to make me feel like lose my peace and lose my joy and cause others to lose their peace and joy, I'm out. Not interested. And so when we talk about this call and the general call to all men, then yeah, we can get into predestination. And does God call all people or just the elect? Another conversation for another time. But we will agree that there is a general call, and that call is for men to be saved. Now there becomes a specific call, a call for you personally that He has designed you for. Now, key, I believe, to this conversation about your personal call is who He's called you to do that with. Because even your personal call, you weren't intended to do that alone. There's still a community. There's still those you are connected to. Even if it's just one other person. There was a reason that Jesus didn't send out individuals, but He sent them out in pairs. There is power when you're connected. Even if it's just one other person, it's more powerful and more effective than you going out alone. So when you're considering your personal call, you have to be looking immediately for who you're called to do that with. That could be your spouse, but I would even encourage you to go beyond that. Because we've experienced it, my wife and I, of trying to accomplish the call alone. And there was a point in time when I turned to my wife and I said, we have to find those we're called to do this with, because even though I'm connected with you and you're connected with me, and that's beautiful and that's powerful, there's still more. And I knew that in my spirit that we needed a connection to some other people that was going to take this thing even further than we could do alone. So be looking for who you're called to do it with. But your call is very critical to your training. Your call puts the training in context. If you're just training to train, eventually that gets old. Even just in the natural, people who train, just going to the gym just to train, eventually they need a goal. They need a certain weight to lose. They need a certain weight to lift. They need a 5K or a marathon or an obstacle course or something to train for. It gets old just training. There is value in training in and of itself, but that training was designed for something. Okay, so you can find value of just training to be healthy. Okay, that could be a goal. But there starts to become a time when it's like, I need to put this to use. I'm getting stronger. I have more endurance. I have more muscle. I feel better. Now I would like to put this to some good use. Maybe you take this training and you use this to mow the elderly's lawn, or you use it to spend more time with your kids at the park. But knowing that there is something more beyond just the gym or just the training session. It may be in a gym or maybe outside of a gym, but there's a reason for you getting healthy and strong. Okay? I believe it's very important to have a goal. At first, the goal is just to start showing up, right? Just to get out of bed and start working out. But eventually, that becomes routine. That becomes habit. And now, there needs to be a greater goal. And so what I want to challenge you is, don't make the goal just an obstacle course or just the marathon or just to lift so much weight or to lose so much weight. Make the goal connected to your core, to your identity. Who are you and what are you created for? This will give so much meaning to your training. It takes it so far beyond the vanity of just looking good, of being confident with your shirt off, right? All of us really, I really believe that all of us would prefer to have that confidence, where we're not self-conscious and insecure. I believe most people, if not everyone, would love the confidence just to go to the beach and enjoy the beach without worrying about the jiggle, right? You know what I'm talking about. You're not worried about who's looking or what they're thinking. In reality, nobody's looking and nobody's thinking. That's the reality of it. But we have it in our head. We become insecure and we think everybody's looking at us. When in fact, nobody's looking at you. They're enjoying the beach and they're worried about who's looking at them. And so when we get over that, we live in so much more freedom. But this life is about so much more than just looking good or being confident in your skin, okay? It's more than just the physical transformation. I want to help people understand why they're training for an eternal benefit, for an eternal cause. What are you called to? What is the ultimate goal? And so this is what we're talking about today, the ultimate goal. What are you really training for in life? It's so far beyond just a six-pack, or a dress size, or a certain weight. It's so far beyond that. It's important you set goals and define that and then make that connection to your core. It puts the training in context. It gives you the motivation and the drive. When you are training for your destiny, motivation is built in that. You don't need, although it still helps to have a coach by your side helping you. But if nobody is there and nobody else shows up, you're still going to show up because you have a destiny. You have a purpose that's clearly defined. And this training is part of it. I have to be healthy so that I can fulfill my call. Many people never fulfill their destiny, never fulfill their call because they are limited physically. And that's just the reality of it. There are people who are called to the mission field who aren't there right now because they have health problems, whatever that is. And here's the thing. I believe God can heal you of that. He wants to heal you of that, but then he also wants to give you wisdom so you don't fall back into that. And he wants to release you to get out there and start doing what you were created to do. Yeah, maybe years have been wasted. Maybe years have been lost. But God is an expert at redemption. He knows how to redeem things. And what you have lost, he will restore. He's that kind of God. And so your last years can be your best years. If you've wasted years, guess what? He can produce more in your final years than you ever wasted. That's the beautiful thing about God and God in your life and living for God. And it's time to get busy. It's time to get active. If weight has kept you from going and doing and engaging, I have trained multiple people who have started living a reclusive life, disconnected, uninterested in people because they become so self-consumed. Maybe it's because they're self-conscious, they're overweight, whatever the reason. There's been multiple reasons. Usually, in my experience working with people, it's been weight. People become very self-conscious because they're overweight. And granted, it's not healthy. It's not good. But you're not going to solve that problem by staying inside and cutting yourself off from the community of God who is there to help you. So you need to just allow yourself to receive the healing of God, receive the strength of God. You can be vulnerable with the people of God, and you need to get out there and get engaged and start living out your destiny. Because here's the thing, other people's destiny depends on you. Your call is connected to other people and their call and their personal destiny. They need to hear the truth from you so that they can respond to the truth, so that they can go out and start living the life God designed them to live. So don't rob them of their future by staying inside and refusing to go out because you're insecure. That can change. That can change. The good thing about your physical is the physical can always change. And so can your mindset. And so can your emotions. They can change. And they can only get better in God. It's beautiful. Now, the power of focus. The power of focus. We talked a little bit about focus when we talked about training and training your eye, training yourself to see certain things. Once you have defined your goal, now there are a lot of different tests and things you can do, assessments, that's the word I was looking for. Assessments you can take that will examine your personality type and examine your spiritual gifts and then help you define your call. I'm not saying that's bad, okay? Those things can help us, but they will never replace relationship. They will never replace you coming into God's presence and letting him speak to you your name and your destiny. You know, it was so powerful when Moses turned aside from what he was doing, and he saw the burning bush, and he gave his attention to the bush. And God from the bush spoke his name and revealed his call. And revealed the divine plan to accomplish the call. See, Moses had tried to accomplish the call on his own in the flesh, and he ended up killing the Egyptian that was beating the Hebrew. And that was his attempt to do what was inside of him. He was created for deliverance, to be a savior, to be a deliverer. God had created him for this. And then he tried to make that happen in his flesh. And that's what it resulted in. And it didn't work out. He ended up fleeing and running. But in the desert, he had resigned his life to just live watching sheep. But that's not what he was designed for. And God got his attention and called him aside, spoke his name, reminded him of who he was, and told him, go back. We're doing it different this time, Moses. We're doing it my way. Instead of saving one Hebrew at a time, you're going to save the whole nation in a day, but it will only be done my way. It's so big, it's so far beyond you, that without God, it's doomed to failure. That's the beautiful thing about the call of God. You get connected to something so far beyond you and your ability that without God, it's doomed to failure. But with God, success is inevitable. So he said, go there, say this, do this. He gave him precise, exact instructions. And he did that along with Aaron. They told Moses exactly what God had said. They did exactly what God had instructed them to do. And in the end, God's plan unfolded like he said it would. And God's people were allowed to leave Egypt. And then God saw them all the way through to the promised land. This is the same thing that is available to us when we hear him speak our name and reveal our destiny and the way that this will be achieved. When we obey that, when we follow that path, I'm telling you, it's so much bigger than us, but it will happen. It will happen. I love it. It's the power of relationship. It's the power that comes from heaven and gives you the ability to do what you are created to do. I love it. This is the ultimate goal. So your ultimate goal at this point should be him. It should be Jesus. It should be fellowship. You should be able to say, I know the voice of God. If you cannot say that, then there's no way you'll ever know the ultimate goal. There is no way you'll ever know why you're training or why you should train. You see, his voice gives purpose to your effort. But without his voice, your effort is all you. And it will always be limited. And it will never accomplish what it could accomplish in him. Man, I'm preaching right now. It's good stuff. But it's true. It's true, and it's vital, and it's necessary for your training. Man, these first 4 sessions have just been laying groundwork, explaining the nature of true cross-training, what this is, but it's really getting to the heart of life. It's getting to the heart of training, why you should train, how you should train. It all returns to the Spirit. It all returns to relationship. That is the reason for everything, and that is the method for everything. That's the energy for everything, and that is the result of everything, is him. It's him. It all comes down to him. Without him, nothing is possible, but with him, all things are possible. He gives purpose to your training. He is the goal. Once you have him, now he'll tell you the specifics. He must be your ultimate goal, your persistent goal, your daily goal. And then from him, you will hear your name and your destiny. You'll never outgrow him. You'll never have it so figured out that you don't need to hear from him again. Jesus, it was a daily thing. That's where he got his bread. That's where he got his sustenance. He told his disciples, they were pleading with him, Jesus, you need to eat. He says, guys, I have bread you don't know of. He was so full spiritually that it was sustaining him physically. This is the power that is available to us in the Spirit. See the connection? It's always from the Spirit, influencing our soul, and then manifesting in the flesh. So if you're all flesh, if it's all effort, if it's all work, that's only going to last so long. And you're going to run out of motivation. You may have to pick race after race, obstacle course after obstacle course, or mission trip after mission trip even. But if it's not rooted in a relationship with Him, it won't last. Because it's self-effort. It's not energized by the Spirit. I promise you, when you're energized by the Spirit, you'll be amazed how far your flesh can go. Man, I'm telling you, there was so much more I was going to talk about in this session, but the Holy Spirit has taken this session, and these are words He wants to drive home to somebody that's listening right now, is return to relationship. Your goal, your destiny, the reason for your training has to be found and will only be found in Him. And when you find Him and you hear from Him, your destiny, there is built-in motivation and there's built-in energy to accomplish it. I don't know if I need to say anything more. Like I said, there was so much more I wanted to say, but I try to keep these podcasts short so that you can digest them and then apply them. If you're not applying these things, don't just listen to these things and then walk on with your day. Apply the principles. So how do you apply this principle? Go get alone and worship the Lord. Go get alone and declare His greatness. Begin to just worship Jesus. Worship God. If you don't know where to start, turn to Psalm 145. It's a good worship psalm, declaring the greatness of God. Personalize it. Read it. Make it a prayer. Make it a declaration. And then whenever you feel the unction to pray, the desire to pray from your belly, just release whatever comes out. It may be a sound. It may be a groan. It may be a tone. It may be a song. But when you begin to release this that's coming from the inside out, all of a sudden you are connected and become one with the Spirit of God. It's in that place that God begins to speak to you. It's very hard for you to hear God when you're busy doing other things. Yes, we do need to pray without ceasing, pray all day long, listening and hearing and communing with God all day long, but we have to have that time that's focused so we can hear His voice, hear what He's saying to me, hear Him call your name and personalize it. Man, I'm not saying anything more. That's what somebody needed to hear in this podcast, is return to relationship. You want to know your purpose, your goal, the reason for your training? You want to have motivation and the energy to do it? It's simple. It's relationship. Moses, he was watching sheep, and something caught his eye. It was a bush that was on fire and it wasn't consumed. It was something unusual. And he said he turned aside. He turned aside from what he was doing and he gave his attention to this unusual thing, this supernatural happening. And when you do that, God knows how to get your attention. And when He does that, you must turn aside and give your attention to it, to Him. And when you give your attention to Him, what comes from that will change your life. So, nothing more needs to be said. I could give you some more practical things. I could give you some training tips and tricks and all these things. That'll come later. But I believe what God wanted to do this session is remind you to return to Him. Nothing else matters. Don't come up with a goal in your head. Don't sit down and try to figure out your life and come up with a really big goal. You don't need to. God's goal is big enough. In fact, it will blow you away. It will scare you to death. You would have never come up with God's goal. because we always tend to come up with what we think we can do. But God is always going to show you and to call you to something that you can't do without Him. So those kind of goals,